When you think of a company that has conquered the world of drinks and beverages and then gone on to replicate that success in the ultra-competitive arena of world sports? If you hadn't guessed, I'm referring to Red Bull. They've done it through breaking boundaries and always challenging the status quo. And no, I'm not referring to the cost cap. Red Bull has become one of the most recognisable brands worldwide, selling roughly 7 billion cans every year. But while the company's DNA is rooted in the drink, their crown jewel is their Formula One team. Having now won 5 Constructors Championships and 6 Drivers' Championships since they joined the sport in 2005, the F1 team really put Red Bull on the map. But what if I told you that this $27 billion company began all the way back in 1976 in Thailand by a man called Chaleo Uvidya? So yes, Red Bull's story goes all the way back to 1976 when a smart and cunning Thai businessman called Chaleo Uvidya launched a viscous syrupy drink called Krating Daeng. And basically it contained a mix of ingredients like caffeine, taurine and a lot of sugar. And it was used by Thai truck drivers to help them stay awake on long journeys. But while Krating Daeng was hugely popular in Thailand, it was completely unknown by the rest of the world. But come 1984, this would all change forever. An Austrian man who worked for a toothpaste company took a business trip to Thailand to promote their minty product. But once he landed, he felt knocked out by jet lag. And so he tried a Krating Daeng and his jet lag completely disappeared. The man's name was Dietrich Mateschitz. Mateschitz was also amazed by this product that he contacted Chaleo and offered a business proposal. He wanted to buy 49% of the company and sell cans of the drink in Europe. Well, Chaleo agreed, and after both of them invested $500,000 each, Red Bull GmbH was founded using the same logo. Funnily enough, this logo of the two bulls charging into the sun hasn't been changed one bit since 1976. Well, 3 years after the company was founded, Red Bull went on sale in Austria in April of 1987. But it was what Red Bull did next that resulted in their enormous success. Well, as I explained, the product was originally for the blue-collar workers of Thailand. However, for the European market, they repositioned the brand more as an upscale drink for young professionals. And so they started selling it in Austrian colleges and ski resorts. They continued selling a reasonable amount of cans, but can you guess what they did next that has since revolutionized how companies market themselves? They launched their bold and aggressive sports marketing campaigns by advertising in a variety of extreme sports all around the world, and beginning the iconic Red Bull Gives You Wings commercials. This was genius because it allowed Red Bull to be perceived as cool and trendy among younger people, which really began to cement a strong customer base. Through advertising in sports like snowboarding, surfing, mountain biking, windsurfing, my favourite ice skating racing, and many, many more, Red Bull have deeply understood their customer base, matching their high-energy products with high-energy sports. But you may be wondering, where does Formula One come into all of this? Well, it all started when Red Bull stepped up their involvement in sports marketing by actually buying and owning sports teams. Before they bought RB Leipzig, FC Salzburg, EC Salzburg, and their Formula One team, they bought up a small racing team called RSM Marco in 1999, run by the one and only Helmut Marko. But I'll speak more about Mr. Marko in just a bit. However, even before that, they made their first venture into Formula One in 1989 by trying to sponsor Ferrari driver Gerhard Berger. Well, funnily enough, Berger agreed and was actually Red Bull's first sponsored athlete. Fast forward to 2023 and that list of sponsored athletes is at over 500 worldwide. Well, 6 years later they increased their involvement in the sport by sponsoring the Sauber Formula One team in 1995. But it is important to note that this was purely a sponsorship with no element of ownership. And well, this remained until 2004, and the only reason it fell apart was because Red Bull were planning to step it up in Formula One. Let me tell you how. Basically, long story short, there was a team called Stewart Grand Prix that competed back in the 90s. But after money fell short, they sold the team to Ford Motor Company, who then decided to rename the team Jaguar Racing. But to put it mildly, it was a massive failure, and they put the team up for sale in 2004 after only 5 years in the sport. Well, as you'd expect, Red Bull took this opportunity by the horns, if you pardon the pun, and bought the Jaguar team for the 2005 Formula One season. But Red Bull's journey in the sport had only just begun. This was a momentous occasion for Red Bull, as this was the first major ownership venture they took beyond their huge presence in extreme sports advertising. And well, it's fair to say they ruffled some feathers in the Formula One world. You see, most teams operate in a very corporate way, being very serious and professional. Red Bull then came along and directly opposed this. They brought their extreme sports personality by sponsoring film premieres and chucking it on the car, or by building the Red Bull Energy Station, which has become the party centre for the Monaco Grand Prix weekend. It's fair to say Red Bull made a big impact when they joined Formula One, but inevitably this resulted in other teams not taking them seriously and saying they are purely involved to just create headlines. But let me take you through why that couldn't have been further from the truth. Now, while they have used their Formula One platform to make some incredible content, such as driving their F1 car across the US, racing on top of a mountain with proper snow tyres, and even doing a pit stop in zero gravity, their goals in Formula One stretched far beyond creating some fun videos. Helmut Marko, who is now the man spearheading the Formula One project, brought on a man called Christian Horner in 2005 to be the team principal. This decision only backed up everyone's belief to not take them seriously, as he was only 32 years old. But Horner had come from the incredibly successful Arden International, which was a junior team that he set up himself. So his appointment had quite a bit of uncertainty around it. Question was he the man to lead the team forward? But it was the next steps of the Red Bull team in Formula One that made everyone take notice. Firstly, only a year after joining F1, they managed to get a man called Adrian Newey on board, who is, without exaggeration, the most legendary technical director of all time, having won 11 Constructors' Championships. Coming from McLaren, Newey was looking for a new challenge, and so he took the huge gamble on Red Bull for 2006. This move was massive for Red Bull, and was arguably a major reason for their later success. Now, Red Bull's next step was to put in the foundations to create a truly dominant team in Formula One. They needed to find a way to shape Formula One around them and utilise new talent better than any other team. And so they did this through the Red Bull Junior team, and what was then Toro Rosso. But you might be thinking how that resulted in such great success. Well, it's genius, and let me tell you why. Basically, the man overseeing the Formula One operations was Helmut Marko, but he was also the head of the Red Bull Junior team, which began after Red Bull bought up RSM Marko, Helmut Marko's team, in 1999. And well, Red Bull used this team to try and find the greatest young talents in motorsport at the time. This driver development program was instrumental for Red Bull to bring in huge future stars of Formula One, and so when they finally started their own team, they began to test out these young hotshots, and over the years they have introduced us to some serious drivers, most notably being Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo, Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly, and of course, Max Verstappen. Now, as it stands, Red Bull have 12 drivers on their junior team, with a few of these guys looking very promising. So the Red Bull junior team has been one aspect for success in Formula One, but it wouldn't be half as useful if it wasn't for Red Bull's sister team, AlphaTauri, or what was Toro Rosso. But what really is AlphaTauri or Toro Rosso? Well, Toro Rosso was set up in 2006, 1 year after Red Bull joined, by buying up the failing Minardi team. A literal translation of Red Bull in Italian, Toro Rosso was a masterstroke from the Red Bull team. This designated B team allowed drivers from the junior team to be tested in Formula One with a proper race drive without having to gamble by putting them into the top team. This eliminated completely the common risk in Formula One of trying out complete rookies, a job that is usually left to the backmarker teams. Red Bull essentially owned their own backmarker, which has obvious benefits. Matter of fact, every driver I listed previously went to Red Bull from Toro Rosso apart from Carlos Sainz, and 3 of the 4 remaining went on to have some serious success. Essentially, setting up Toro Rosso was the moment that all other teams began to take them seriously, as starting a whole other team is a massive investment to make, and clearly showed Red Bull had intentions for great success. But was it all worth it? Did Red Bull achieve the success to warrant their billion-dollar investment into just one sport? Well, let's break it down. So within the first 4 years of their time in Formula One, they found it quite hard to make an impact. Despite spending $400 million on the team and its resources in just the first 3 years, they failed to perform better than 5th in the Constructors. They were even beaten by their B team Toro Rosso in 2008 when Vettel won the Italian Grand Prix. It could be said Red Bull were becoming a laughingstock once again. However, come the regulation change in 2009, things really began to change. Thanks to the big teams of McLaren and Ferrari struggling to interpret the regulations correctly, Red Bull found themselves in a great position. For 2009, they finished second in the championship, coming close to chasing down the iconic Brawn GP team. But it was 2010 when Red Bull finally silenced their critics. The foundations that they had put in and the hundreds of millions spent all those years had finally paid off. In 2010, Red Bull built a truly competitive car and went on to win both the driver's title with Sebastian Vettel and the constructors title. These rule breakers were laughed at when they joined the sport and were given no chance in winning a title. And now 5 years after the team began, they were world champions. But Red Bull weren't finished. Over the 4 years including 2010, they won 40 races on their way to take 4 consecutive world championships from 2010 to 2013. During this time, we also witnessed one of the most dominant seasons by a Formula 1 driver, being Sebastian Vettel in 2013. He won the championship by 155 points and won 9 races in a row. That's a record no one has come close to since. And so I think it's fair to say Red Bull's success surpassed even their own expectations. Just 9 years after joining the sport, they became a legendary team. But they weren't quite finished. Now, for those watching in recent years, you'd know Red Bull really struggled to match their success of the early 2010s in the period of 2014 to 2019. They simply couldn't deliver a strong enough package to rival the leaders of Ferrari and Mercedes. However, come 2021, all the years of frustration finally paid off as they were able to build a competitive, championship challenging car. Now, as we know, Red Bull weren't able to win the constructors due to Mercedes' lineup being somewhat stronger, but they were able to deliver Max Verstappen his first world championship. Then we all know what happened in 2022. To put it simply, it was utter domination by Red Bull, winning 17 out of 22 races, with Max storming to his second consecutive title. Max was on such good form that he broke the record for most race wins in one season at 15, and won the championship by 146 points. To put it simply, no one could come close to him. He was in a complete different league of his own out front. And so, looking at 2023, it's looking like much of the same, with Red Bull being truly dominant at testing. So, a little can of energy gloop from Thailand grew to become a worldwide multi-billion-dollar company. Red Bull changed the way companies viewed marketing and showed the world that advertising and sponsorship can be a driver for success in and of itself. And they set an example for how companies should prioritize their customer bases to not just deliver on their promises, but also create a valuable community and culture. Then of course, they set the standards in Formula 1 by setting up the best driver academy in the world and starting a whole nother Formula 1 team. And I'm certain when I say, Red Bull's success won't be stopping anytime soon. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comment section below if you think Red Bull can win another title in 2023. And as always, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell to be reminded of any new videos.